San Francisco 49ers, Los Angeles Rams, part 2 already in week 10. We've got a 49ers Rams locked on crossover coming at you right now.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another Locked On Podcast Network crossover. Brian Peacock here of Locked On 49ers with Travis Rogers of Locked On Rams, breaking down the Week 10 matchup. The Los Angeles Rams visiting the San Francisco 49ers, the biggest storylines, key matchups, and how this game is going to go if the Rams or 49ers are to be victorious in Week 10. So thanks to all the everydayers of Locked On Rams and Locked On 49ers for joining us today. This episode is brought to you by, as are all crossover Thursday episodes, brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. I feel like we just did one of these, Travis. It was 5 week 5, the San Francisco 49ers kind of shockingly, after some big injuries, go down to LA, short week, Thursday night football, and we're victorious in one over the Los Angeles Rams. And that was a wild game. There was a lot of weird twists and turns in that football game. And it's always fun when these two teams get together. So 5 weeks later, the Rams have not lost since. In fact, have hardly given up any points since. I think 20 combined points, which is fewer than they allowed in that one game against the 49ers. So a nice little run. What's the biggest storyline right now with these Rams coming into Week 10?
Yeah, it's funny, Brian. Like you said, it felt like the Rams were set up to kind of have. It's never easy, obviously, but it was certainly the field was tilted in the Rams' direction going into that one. And the first half, I think it was the worst half of football that the Rams have played all season long. They could not get anything done. They had no answers for Mac Jones, and they've been really, really good since. On both sides of the ball. I think as far as the biggest storylines go, I quite frankly, I've talked about this with everybody on all the crossovers all season long after about that San Francisco game. So I kind of lose track of who I've said it to and who I haven't said it to. Rams can't kick at all. Like at all. They can't. They basically have stopped even trying to do it. They missed another kick against New Orleans last week. They played 9 games. They've missed 8 kicks, which is just crazy. And they brought in another kicker this week to have a little competition with Josh Carty. They brought in a former long snapper for the Rams, Jake McQuaid, that's coming in to kind of push Alex Ward a little bit. We'll see whether or not they make a change by the time it comes to Sunday. But I think, the Niner-Ram matchup always seems that the Rams always have weird games against the Niners. They don't quite look like themselves when they go up against a Kyle Shanahan team. But for me, at least, going into this one, it's whether or not, A, do they use the new kicker or the long snapper or both, or do they continue to do the inexplicable, which is run those same guys out there who have been terrible all season long?
Wow, a good old-fashioned kicking competition mid-season. And for a team that's 6-2 right now, trying to go win a division, that's not good when the kicks aren't going through the uprights. And I know the 49ers and 49ers fans that are listening to this know the feeling, because we went through some weird stuff here in San Francisco with the kicking game, and have now settled on, everyone was changed in the offseason with the special teams for the 49ers. New special teams coordinator. They brought in a new long snapper, new punter, Thomas Morstead, and then ended up changing kickers mid-season. Eddie Pinheiro has been as accurate as you can be since he was signed by the San Francisco 49ers. So all of a sudden, Niners special teams is actually playing at a pretty high level. And was it a blocked kick? Or was it just a miss? Something happened in the Niners game with the Rams, too.
I believe, and I'm going a little bit by memory here, I believe it might have been both. Yeah. if I'm going back. It was certainly at least a miss. Maybe somebody got a finger on it. What's so crazy, like you mentioned, the Rams are 6-2. They're good. I mean, they've got a really good offense. Their defense is, I think, better than anybody really realized. And you mentioned they've only given up a small couple of handfuls of points in the last 5 weeks. But the 2 games they have lost are both directly connected to their inability to make kicks. You know what happened in the San Francisco game, and they lost in Philadelphia where they had not one, but they had 2 kicks blocked in the fourth quarter. Yeah. So, if they make the Rams probably should be 7-1. They beat the Colts. They probably shouldn't have. They got a weird guy fumbled out of the back of the end zone going across the goal line situation. They probably should have lost that game, but they probably should have won the other 2. And we're not asking, 58-yard field goals at the buzzer. You're asking this guy to make PATs and 40-yarders, and they're just not making them.
Well, Cardi was supposed to break the league with the kickoffs too, right? And the spinning kickoffs, and I know it's worked to some degree, but you got to be able to hit the field goals too.
Well, it's funny. There's the theory that's kind of knocking around the Rams universe that part of the reason he's having so much trouble making PATs and field goals is because of that kickoff. That the stroke, for lack of a better word, to deliver that kind of knuckleball kickoff that he's been doing has affected his ability to kick. In fact, last week they had Ethan Evans, their punter, kick off a handful of times as well, I think in an effort to kind of just lock Cardi back into being able to make his kicks. But it didn't work because he missed another one. And, depending on who you ask, some people say it's the long snapper. Some people say that it's the protection. Some people think that it's Cardi. And when you're hearing that many people blame that many people, my guess is it's everybody. I think that there's Chase Blackburn, their special teams coach, is certainly largely to blame. And I've said this, my everydayers have heard me say this, Brian. At this point, I think it's Sean McVay's fault that he hasn't changed it. Like that he hasn't changed the special teams coach, that he hasn't changed the kicker, that he's let this continue as long as he has without addressing it. Now it's become a head coaching problem.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways, the head coaches, they're especially these offensive minds, they don't want to worry about special teams. They don't want to think about it. That was part of the process with the 49ers drafting Jake Moody in the 3rd round. It's like, okay, who's the best kicker? Let's draft the best kicker and just be done with it. And turns out, no, you're not done with it. You're never done with it. And I think that's how some of these coaches would like to treat special teams. And sometimes it shows. And actually, there's so many intricacies in. We had a really good conversation here on Locked On 49ers with Tabor Pepper, who was the former long snapper, and brought him in. We talked a little bit about it. It happened to just be right when the Jake Moody stuff was going down. And he talked about how different it can be with the snap and the timing that goes on with that and how different holders hold. And so you get a new snapper and a new kicker, and it just can completely change the whole dynamic. And maybe that's what the Rams need. But this is another game. You got to do something. You can't have a 53-man roster and everybody putting everything into it, the coaching staff, and the game comes down to a kick, and you're not confident that the kicker is going to be able to come through. And so we saw an overtime game with the Niners, and it's going to be close again, probably. That's just the way things are. We'll talk about what we think is going to go down in this football game, some other stories and some key matchups here with the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams in Week 10 next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers and Locked On Rams brought to you by Mizzen and Main. And you know the saying, look good, feel good. Problem is, most dress clothes really just don't check those boxes. Some don't check either. Most of them don't check too. So they look sharp, but they feel stiff, hot, high maintenance. When you get that collar that just never feels right in those dress clothes, that's where Mizzen and Main comes in. That's why they exist. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel comfortable. They actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and they've been perfected ever since. Love that you can go to the office, go to dinner, even go out on the golf course and still feel comfortable all day. It's the feel of athletic wear, but the look of professional menswear. And right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at Mizzen and Main with promo code LOCKEDONNFL20. That's spelled Mizzen, Mizzen, and Main, MIAN.com. MizzenandMain.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL20 for 20% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. And of course, this Crossover Thursday episode, as is every Crossover Thursday, brought to you by PrizePicks. And when it comes to PrizePicks, it could not be simpler and it could not be more fun to play. And it's the easiest way to play DFS. So you can make decisions every day. And with PrizePicks, when you make those decisions, and you're right about those decisions, you can actually get paid. So just stop talking about it with your buddies and just go play PrizePicks and don't miss out on any of the excitement of this season, whether it's NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks, all you do, more or less on 2-player stat projections. And if you get them right, you win. It's that easy. For example, probably don't want to pick anybody on the Lakers on your team. Let's say Steph Curry, maybe. How about Steph Curry and the new stacks feature as well? It's a game changer. You could pick Steph and have points, threes, and assists all in the same lineup. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers alongside Travis Rogers of Locked On Rams, getting you ready for this Niners-Rams rivalry game here in Week 10, and it's already going to be done. Niners-Rams for the second time. They might have a third. It's been known to happen between the 49ers and the Rams and Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, and wouldn't that be fun? As far as matchups go in this one, what matchups are you looking at with the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers? And we kind of skipped over the 49ers' biggest story, talking about the special team stuff in the first segment. But, with the 49ers, it's been the same storyline every week too. And it's been all the injuries. And the 49ers lost another one, first round defensive end in Michael Williams is now done for the year. So he joins Bosa. He joins Fred Warner on that defense. And they did bring in it wasn't a deadline day move. I think 49ers fans were a little disappointed they didn't do an actual big move on the deadline with some of these big blockbusters that happen around the league. Rams were pretty quiet as well. But they did bring in Keon White, a big athletic defensive lineman, fell out of favor with the Patriots. And so there's hope that Clelin Ferrell, who they brought in, who the Niners are familiar with, and Keon White can give the 49ers a little bit something up front. But, a pass rush, somebody that can get home and maybe cause a little bit of uncomfortability for Matthew Stafford, who's just dealing right now. That would be real nice for this 49ers defense, who haven't been able to put a lot of pressure on quarterbacks this year.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's really been kind of clicking for the Rams this year is their ability to protect Matthew Stafford. Like he's gotten sacked here and there, but he really hasn't been under consistent pressure for most of the year. And I was kind of doing a little bit of some research on, has anybody ever won an MVP for the first time at 37 years old? We've seen guys like Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning win them, but they'd won them previously. So the answer is Rich Gannon did it at 37 for the Raiders. So there is a little bit of precedent there. Matthew Stafford, he won the Super Bowl here. He's been really good for the Rams here. And this is as well as I've ever seen him play. He is just absolutely on fire right now. 9 touchdowns, no interceptions in his last 2 games. He's kind of doing whatever he wants. He's throwing the no-look passes. The Davante Adams and Matthew Stafford connection that I think the last time we spoke, Brian, wasn't quite what we were hoping it would be. It was one of those, it's okay. It's not like it's been like nothing and it's like, what the heck's going on? But it's also was one of those, it felt like they were kind of stuck in second gear. They're not stuck in second gear anymore. Like they've really started to figure that out, especially inside the red zone. Davante Adams, in short areas is almost unguardable. And that's a weapon that the Rams really have not had ever with Sean McVay. They've had really good wide receivers, whether it's Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Robert Woods, even OBJ for a period of time. Like they've had a lot of guys go through there, but they haven't had anybody that can do what Davante Adams does. So I'm really curious to see if that continues to get better week to week. And then that offensive line to come back where we started, that Rob Havenstein missed a lot of time. He came back last week. He looked better, but still a little, he's just been around a long time. He's the last of the remaining St. Louis Rams that are still here. So it's that Warren McClendon filled in for him for a couple of weeks and did, whenever you don't say somebody's name on the offensive line, that means they're doing a pretty good job. I don't think we mentioned him once while he was in there, which is a testament to how well he played. But I think as far as matchups for me go, when I look at these two things, and I don't know if this qualifies technically speaking, but I think it's McVay versus Kyle Shanahan. That Sean McVay, I wouldn't trade him for any other coach in the league. However, this seems to be the one puzzle that he cannot figure out. Like I go back to the last time they played earlier in the year, and it felt like, this is as close as you're going to get to a game that feels like this is going to go our way no matter what happens. And Kyle Shanahan figured out a way to make Mac Jones tear the Rams up. And the Rams kind of figured it out a little bit in the second half, but Sean McVay has been slow to adapt to what Kyle Shanahan has been able to do to him. And I'm curious to see what happens next. It felt like last year that script kind of got flipped a little bit, especially in that rain game. I think it was the second game of the season last year. I think it was Thursday night. The final score was like 12-9 or something weird like that. And the Rams finally okay, we cracked this code. We know how to play against this team. And then this year, just boom, right back to the way that it was.
Yeah, they were prepared for Purdy and all these other weapons that weren't there. And so maybe it was just kind of a different team. And the 49ers playing slightly different. And yeah, they were playing a little loose. And Mac Jones like, cool, I'll just stay underneath all day long, get the ball out to Christian McCaffrey and
Kendrick Bourne killed him.
Yeah, Kendrick Bourne will march down the field on you. And whether it's Kendrick Bourne or whoever else, maybe we'll see a little Demarcus Robinson revenge game against the Rams. Who knows? But Kyle Shanahan can get guys open. And if you're a pro, it's gonna, they can muster some offense. And I think that's what you see with Kyle Shanahan here. And Mac Jones has been as good as you could have asked for to come in and fill in for an injured Brock Purdy. I want to loop back real quick on Stafford and Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Do you think there's maybe a blessing in disguise for later in the season for Puka to get kind of banged up and for Stafford to maybe be forced to get that chemistry going with Devontae Adams, and then you get Puka back and all of a sudden, okay, now you got both of them going?
Yeah, maybe. It was interesting. So you go back a couple of games when the Rams didn't have Puka. They were in London. They were playing the Jags, and they hit 10 different receivers. And Devontae Adams had 3 touchdowns, but he only caught 5 passes, and it was for like 38 yards. It's just that he was unguardable in the short area.
Yeah.
But they hit 9 other guys. And I think that everybody was pretty excited about kind of what you're talking about, which is, hey, maybe this is going to force him to look places other than Puka Nacua. Puka came back last week and it was Puka. And it was just right back to the way it was. He gets banged up again. He has to leave the game briefly and the ball gets spread around a little bit. So, I think that maybe having Puka miss a little bit of time might have done it. But, I saw this with my own 2 eyes with Cooper Kupp for years and years. Whenever it got tight, whenever there was kind of a gotta have it sort of situation, a gotta have it play, you knew the ball was going to Cooper Kupp. And I still think that that's the connection with Puka Nacua. But we've seen more Terrence Ferguson in the last couple of weeks than we'd had at any point. They hit 4 different tight ends, 2 games in a row, which is kind of unusual for the Rams. More and more 12 and 13 personnel than they've ever run before. So they're doing things a little bit differently, but Puka is still the guy that when they break that huddle, I know Matthew Stafford's thinking about finding him.
Thinking back to that Thursday nighter, there was a lot of weird stuff that happened in the game. And I think the 49ers might need some of that to happen again, whether, it's an interception or a ball bouncing their way. There was just the dropped, the fumbled pitch from Kyron Williams. And then, the fumble at the goal line where Alfred Collins is, he was kind of blocked and, he's able to just throw that haymaker, get that hand out there and knock the ball out of his hands at the 2-yard line. There's a number of different little things that happened in that game. You needed a 4th and 1 stop and the 49ers needed a lot of those things to kind of bounce their way. And they're going to need some more of those things this week. And the Rams, I think, are favored for a reason. So next, I want to talk about some of those things that could happen, maybe in the 49ers' favor, some things that could happen in the Rams' favor, and paint the picture of what a Rams and the 49ers win might look like this Sunday. Next. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime and the Gametime app. And man, I tell my listeners all the time, if you are a sports fan, you're ever going to want to go to a sporting event, you ever want to go to a concert, a comedy show, you got to have Gametime ready to go and in your pocket. I've used it so many times. I've used it for ball games. Go catch a San Francisco Giants game. I'm about 10 minutes north of the Golden Gate Bridge. I just jam into the city on a Friday night, catch a ball game, and I can get tickets up to first pitch, even an hour after first pitch starts. I've used it numerous times to go see some bands, go see concerts, tons of great last-minute deals. And there's we know we're talking to sports fans here. There's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, the ticket buying purchase is super frustrating. It's a hassle. You got queues, you got login screens, and then the prices jumping at checkout. Super frustrating. You think you're going to get one price, and then there's something else altogether when it's time to check out. Love Gametime for that reason. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. You always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price and all fees included. So the price you see is the price you pay. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. All right, here we go. Travis Rogers of Locked On Rams with Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers, breaking this one down for you. And I want to paint a little picture here of Rams 49ers. So I talked about some of the things that happened in the last game. Niners are going to need the ball to bounce their way. Can you get an interception? Matthew Stafford can get a wild hair sometimes. Throw the ball to the other team. I know he's been very good lately. Can you get your big mitts on a ball at the line of scrimmage and pop it up in the air and catch it? You're going to need some help. Maybe can you win on special teams? I think the 49ers are going to need a combination of some of those things, and there's a reason the Rams are favored in this game, and they should be with how banged up the 49ers are. But the Niners, as banged up as they are, still have 6 wins, and there's a reason. They're still playing some good football. They're well coached on both sides of the ball. I think one of the aspects, and you could talk to me about if this has changed, if this has gotten a lot better since that 49ers-Rams game the first time, is the Rams secondary. Now, the Rams are good up front, but they were able to be had on the back end. Is that still the case with this team? Because I think that's one of the things the 49ers are going to have to do. Kyle's going to try to run the ball, but can you be in third and manageable when you still have your entire playbook at your disposal, then find those matchups in the back end, whether it's Kendrick Bourne or anybody else?
They've gotten a little bit better, Brian. They did, like you mentioned, the Rams were pretty quiet at the deadline. They did make a trade before the deadline, about a week before. Roger McCreary from the Tennessee Titans comes over. We didn't get to see him against the Saints last week, so I'm curious to see what it looks like. It feels like he's more of what they already had. It gives them a little bit of depth. I don't think it's exactly what I or Rams fans were looking for as far as kind of a shutdown corner. Sauce Gardner, of course, goes to the Colts with a couple of first round picks, pretty high price. So the Rams obviously, and what was interesting to me is the Rams, with Les Snead and Sean McVay, when they kind of feel like they have a shot at it, they go for it. They're not gun shy. Like when they think there's an opportunity to be had, they'll try to do it. Whether that was with Jalen Ramsey, whether that was with the Matthew Stafford trade, whether that was acquiring Von Miller or Odell Beckham Jr. or whatever it is. Like when they're not one of those teams that it's too high, we're out. Like they'll go for it when they think they have a chance. And I think the fact that they didn't do that, and in particular, to your point, didn't do something like that in the secondary, leads me to believe they think they have what they need, because they're good enough. And I would love to get your opinion on this too. I look around the NFC. I think there are maybe 6 teams that you could make a reasonable argument for are the best team in the NFC. And I don't think any of them are the wrong answer, but I think the Rams feel like they have enough back there. Quentin Lake's playing at a really high level. He's gotten a couple of forced fumbles the last couple of weeks. He got his first interception not that long ago. So he's starting to play a little better. Darius Williams has been better after being not very good early in the season. And I'm curious to see what McCreary can bring to the table. But, you look around the NFC, it feels like everybody's got something that's not great. And the Rams are certainly in that same boat. But is that kind of how you see it?
Oh, absolutely. And even teams like the Packers and the Lions that I thought might have been, maybe a little level above where any of these teams in the West, although I thought the Seahawks and the Rams and the Niners would be competitive and good this year. And I actually had high hopes for the Cardinals as well. And they've looked, kind of up and down. Maybe Brissett's the answer for them. I don't know. They have the West is the only division in football that has all 4 teams with a plus point differential, by the way. And so even the Cardinals do. But the Lions have 3 losses, and there's been games where they look beatable. And then they started the season slow too. It's like, oh man, they had too many losses and lose all your coordinators. And then it looked like, oh man, now they're the best team in football. And it's like, I'm not so sure. It's hard to tell. The Philadelphia Eagles kind of feel the same way. The Packers don't know how to put the pedal down. I feel like they have killer instinct, the Green Bay Packers. Because on paper, they should be one of the best teams in the conference. I really like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Niners have already seen them. I think they're coming up maybe next for the Rams, right? The Rams?
Two more. The Rams enter the part of their schedule, which is why I think this game against the Niners coming up here is such a big deal. This is only the second division game that they'll have played. They're already 0-1, losing to the Niners earlier, but this kicks off at San Francisco, home against the Seahawks, home against the Bucks on Sunday Night Football in a few weeks. And then what felt like one of those layup games when the schedule came out, they have to go to Carolina the week after that, who's a 5-4 football team. They've got a little life there. So you've got 4 NFC teams that you're going to play in the next 4 weeks. All 4 of them have playoff aspirations, and this is what determines division. This is what determines, conference record, determines seeding, all of this stuff. And the Rams have just gotten fat on the AFC. They have 1 NFC win so far this season. That was last week against New Orleans.
The Panthers is the crazy one. They're just running the heck out of the ball on people right now. It's pretty amazing what they're doing. And with what Sam Darnold is doing with the Seahawks right now, you got Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. I think those are probably the 2 biggest competition for Matthew Stafford. You're talking about MVP right now.
Yeah, the Sam Darnold thing is wild to me because I've been wrong about Sam Darnold on both sides 100 times. Sam Darnold played high school football about 10 minutes from where I'm sitting right here. Okay, so I've been familiar with Sam Darnold at San Clemente High School, familiar with him at USC, and watching him at SC, I'm like, this guy's got it. Like, he's really, really good. Then he goes to the Jets and he stinks. And it's like, okay, maybe that's just the Jets. Maybe, nobody's been good with the Jets. Goes to Carolina and you're like, it doesn't look very good. You guys had him up in San Francisco, didn't really play very much. Then he explodes in Minnesota. And then the Rams just tear him to pieces twice. The Lions tear him to pieces. And it's like, that's the guy right there. And he goes to Seattle, and I'm like, that's not going to work. And he's killing it all over again. So I've thrown up my hands on Sam Darnold. I don't know if he's an MVP or he's just in the perfect situation. I can't figure it out.
I think getting some good coaching for sure helped him get his rebuild that confidence that he once had was super important. I think it is really important for quarterbacks. And it's funny because last week he was just dealing. He's like 15 for 15. And then all of a sudden throws that one weird little interception. He's still got that in him, But he's super talented. He's athletic and he can throw the heck out of the ball. And so I'm kind of rooting for him. Don't love seeing him do great for the Seahawks, but he seems like a good dude and definitely has figured some things out, and he's having a phenomenal year too. So this is going to be fun in the NFC, man, because there's a lot of teams that are really close as we're in the halfway point right now.
Yeah, the Rams play the rest of their games are all NFC games. They're finished with their AFC slate. Obviously, just like the Niners, they played the AFC South this year. Their crossover game was against Baltimore, another AFC opponent there. So they really do need to win on Sunday against the Niners, because 0-2 in your division, and you lose all your tiebreakers there. It's another NFC loss if it does go that way. So I think whatever they got cooking, they're gonna come out with it. It feels like they got kind of caught flat-footed with what they were getting ready for the last time because of all the injuries, like we talked about. And I think they will be fully present. Whether or not McVay can crack the Shanahan code, I don't know. We'll see, but I don't think it's going to be because they weren't ready. And I think that's probably what happened the last time, because the first half they just got run over.
Yeah, might have been one of those weird trap games almost, even though a division rival shouldn't really be that way, but it felt that way coming in. I was picking against the Niners by a lot. And the line all of a sudden got really big in that game. And so we'll see. And, I expect these to be competitive games within the division, but you nailed it too, talking about, you got to start talking about tiebreakers here. And the 49ers are in a good spot with 6 wins, and they've won against all the teams in the NFC West. And so that's really important. And to get both against the Rams would be huge for this thing going down the stretch between in a 3-team race in the NFC West with the Seahawks, Rams, and 49ers right now. Just real quick before we go, what's it look like for a Rams win?
I think if they make their kicks, they win. If they play the way they've been playing, if Matthew Stafford, and like you said, sometimes he'll have a day where you're like, what's going on out there? But he feels like he's kind of elevated his game. So if he does what he does, And that defense, the way they can rush the passer is no joke. We haven't talked about Jared Verse or Byron Young. Byron Young's second in the league in sacks with 9. I believe they're third in the league total. Braden Fisk just got his first of the season. Puna Ford has kind of changed the way that they defend the run a little bit. They're much better there. So I don't really worry too much about the defense. I don't think they're going to give up much more than 20, 24 on a bad day sort of situation, which, that usually puts you in most games. If they make their kicks, I think they win. And I just don't know if they're going to make their kicks. I don't think Sean McVay knows if they're going to make their kicks.
Young can really close on the quarterback, man. That guy is so athletic coming off the edge. And then you got Versus the opposite. He just wants to run through everyone's face on the way to the quarterback, too.
He does.
It's a good young group on that defensive line. We talked a lot about them in the last crossover.
Yeah.
It's definitely important to mention how good they're playing up front on that Rams defense. It's going to be fun. It's an important game in the NFC West on Sunday. 49ers and Rams. Appreciate all the everydayers for hanging out with us on Locked On 49ers and Locked On Rams. And who knows, Travis, maybe we'll do crossover number 3 some point in January.
Yeah, Brian, I've given you the entire crossover, an opportunity to congratulate my Dodgers on winning back-to-back World Series. I just figure it slipped your mind temporarily.
I think my headphones are broken right now, so I guess that's a good place to end this crossover podcast. Locked On 49ers, Locked On Rams. Make sure you're all subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast.